Welcome to the Boombox. I'm Amy Holcomb, Experiential Learning Coordinator. Today we'll be learning a simple hand sewing craft with my colleague Amy Kuster. Finger puppets! Let's get started.
Hi, I'm Amy Kuster, and today we're going to make finger puppets in the shape of minions. So for this activity, we're going to use the materials we have in front of me here. Here we have graph paper and a pencil so we can sketch out our design and shape. We also have liquid stitch, which is a fabric adhesive in case we don't want to sew the eyeball onto our finger puppet, we can just glue it. We have some pins and needles for our sewing. We also have 2 colors of embroidery floss. We've got white to sew on the eyeballs and yellow for the body of the finger puppet. We've got fabric scissors, but any old scissors can do if that's what you have around the house. We also have a black permanent marker for drawing the finishing touches on our finger puppets. And we have 2 colors of felt. We've got yellow for the body and white for the eye. All right, for our first step, we're each gonna take a piece of graph paper and we're going to sketch out the shape that we want for our finger puppets. So you can see I'm leaving room for my finger. Now we're gonna take our scissors and cut out our shape. So now we're going to take our outline and cut that outline out of our yellow felt. So you can kind of just eyeball it if you want to. Minions fun. Or you can take a pin and pin your template to the fabric so it's going to hold it in place while you cut. So now that you've cut out one side, you're going to unpin your template and cut out a second one. What you're ultimately going to do is sew those 2 pieces together, and that's going to make the pocket for your finger. Okay, now that we've got the 2 sides of the body for our finger puppet, we're going to take our white felt, and that's where we're going to cut out the eyeballs. So at this point, if you wanted to use the liquid stitch fabric glue to glue on your eyeball, you'd be able to do that. It does take at least 30 minutes to dry, so we're actually gonna go ahead and sew ours, but it's good to have that in mind as an option. So what we need to do is each take a needle from our pin cushion, very carefully, you don't wanna stick yourself. And we're also going to use the white embroidery floss at this point. So let's get our needles threaded. You can take a couple of tries. Once you get it through a little bit, go ahead and pull it out, and we're gonna tie a little knot. So once you've got your needle threaded, you're gonna figure out about where on the minion body you're gonna want the eyeball, and from there you're gonna sew it on. I like to start sewing from behind, that way the extra thread is not going to show. And what we're gonna do is use what is called a running stitch, which is where we'll go up one side of the fabric and go back down through and repeat that pattern until we've gone around the entirety of what we're trying to sew. Once you've gone around and sewn on the entirety of the eyeball, you're gonna tie off your thread. So I'm going to do that by flipping over the piece of felt and then going back through one of my stitches. So that creates a little bit of a loop here. I'm gonna move my needle back through that loop, which creates a second loop, and I'm going to go back through that one as well and pull. That's going to create a knot that's going to hold well enough for this finger puppet. I'm going to snip off the bit of excess. So what Amy is doing is she's cutting a much longer piece of the yellow embroidery floss. A good rule of thumb for a finger puppet is to cut it at least 2 times the length of your arm. So I've got mine. I'm going to go ahead and thread my needle again. So I'm going to take these 2 pieces together and match them up as closely as I can. And this is what I'm going to end up sewing. Now the beginning and the end are the trickiest bits because again we're going to try and conceal the extra thread behind or within the finger puppet. So my first stitch is going to start between the 2 pieces of felt and go up through the top. So I'm going to pull that guy all the way through, tuck that stitch underneath, and then I'm ready to really get started sewing around the entire periphery of this finger puppet. What I'm going to do is go up through the bottom, and before I pull all of the thread through, I'm going to leave that little bit of a loop, and I'm going to sew through the loop before doing it again. So again, this is a blanket stitch. We're going to go up through the bottom. Before we pull all the way through, we're going to leave that little bit of a loop, and we're going to take the needle through the loop. So we're going to do this around the entire edge of the finger puppet. Make sure you leave the bottom part open so you can fit your finger in. So now that we're at the end of sewing the body of the finger puppet, we're ready to tie it off with a knot. We're going to do it much the same way we did with the eyeball, except this time we're going to focus on being inside of the puppet. So I'm going to find one of my older stitches. I'm going to go back through it. I'm going to go through the loop that created and through a last loop. So now that we have the sewing finished, we're going to put finishing touches on with our black permanent marker. So what I like to do for a minion, since their eye is usually in these little goggle type things, I like to draw a border around the white part of the eye, but just so you have a little bit of a border. And then I like to add the straps for the goggle. And what would your minion be without the pupil of their eye? That's what makes it recognizable, and a little bit of a smile.
Thanks, Amy Kuster, for showing us how to make finger puppets. They can be movie inspired like our Minions, for different holidays or seasonal themes, your favorite stories like Little Red Hen, which will make an excellent gift, or just for fun like our gnome. Visit us here in the Boombox and we'll help you get started or give it a try at home.
Who will help me bake the bread? Not I, said the minion. Not I, said the turkey. Not I, said the gnome. Then I will do it myself.